Very important to be following on the socials for that reason, so we can get in contact, interact, and all that. But also, very important because we want to involve y'all in the show as much as possible. So Twitter, X, Instagram, at Jody Piquel is the bottom line there. So I asked y'all earlier this week, what are going to be the headlines when it comes to next week? Like after week 1, the dust settles, what is going to be the big headlines that we walk away with? And y'all answered in full force, as you always do. So I want to break down a few of them and just kind of talk about the impact they could have on the college football landscape. And one of you said DJU, DJ Uiagalelei, looks like what we all expected him to be. And the impact of this would be tremendous. To rewind the tape a little bit, DJ Uiagalelei, coming out of St. John Bosco High School in Southern California, the school that I played against actually quite a bit growing up, playing at Orange Lutheran High School, neither here nor there. Really good team, St. John Bosco, DJ Uiagalelei, really good quarterback. One of the most sought-after prospects in his class. And it was down to, I think it was Oregon, I think it was Clemson, going back and forth, and where he might be going was the narrative. Ends up picking Clemson. The college football world erupted. Like, it was such a big deal when he ended up picking Clemson. Tons of ability. I believe he was a 5-star kid. It was a very big deal when he chose Clemson. And then you keep going throughout his college career, and he gets into that game against Notre Dame. No Trevor Lawrence. DJ Uiagalelei is out there. Goes for over 400 yards. And that was pretty much the only meaningful action we saw from him. Even though they lost that game, you left that one saying, all right, Clemson's got the next one in the wings. Clemson's got their next guy. And then what happened with his time at Clemson. It was unfortunate. But if he ends up looking like what he was projected to be out of high school, that would mean a couple of things. The first is it would be a horrible look for Clemson. Because DJ Uiagalelei even talked to The Athletic about it and was like, yeah, I wasn't a fan of some things we did offensively. I don't think he was throwing shade. I think he was being honest. And so if he goes out and balls at Oregon State, it's like, same quarterback, different place. What changed? You know what I'm saying? I'm not throwing shade at Dabo either. I just think that would be an indictment on the offensive system, which, of course, is no longer in place. So it is what it is. But it would speak volumes to us being right originally about who DJ Uiagalelei is as a college quarterback. The other thing for Oregon State, if he lives up to that billing of what he was out of high school, of what he was in 2020 against Notre Dame, throwing over 400 yards, Oregon State, hear me clearly, Oregon State has a chance not just to win the Pac-12, and that goes without saying. It's anybody's conference. There's that. Oregon State has a real shot to make the college football playoff if DJ Uiagalelei becomes the version we saw in 2020 against Notre Dame. I don't buy the defense is going to have issues. I know they bring back about half their production from last year. I think the identity of this team is so solid, and I think they're so well coached with Jonathan Smith. I think DJU playing at that level would make them that kind of team. So I can't wait to watch it. A tremendous headline from one of y'all. Thank you for getting that in there. Next one from Nike Morvell. This is one of my favorite handles I've seen during the segment. So thank y'all for getting after it on the handle side of things. Florida State is back, is how they say it. So if that's the headline we're having, that leads me to believe that Florida State went, remember the Titans on LSU, left no doubt. It was definitive. I don't know what the score would be in this situation, but I think if we're saying they're back, we're like, okay, I saw what I needed to see from Florida State to be in on the Noles in this coming season. If that's the case, I start looking at the path of Florida State, and one of y'all got at me actually on Instagram as well and asked about this, like, hey, if they beat LSU, are they going undefeated? I'm not going to just call my shot right now and say that, but when you look at the schedule, okay, who's the next best team you're going to play from a roster standpoint? I understand you got to bring it every game. Anybody can beat anybody. That's why we love college football. But when you're looking down the path, you see Clemson at Clemson, which is difficult. But if you make it definitive against LSU, the confidence that builds, the perception of Florida State, I mean, is there a tremendous gap between Clemson and LSU? I don't know, but I feel like they're pretty similar as we sit here August 31st. You would feel really good about your chances to go wire to wire if it's definitive against LSU. Now, again, we're not overreacting, but if that's the way we're talking about Florida State, I think that would be a fair conversation to start to have. Now, to be clear, they could drop that game against Clemson in week 4 and still get to the ACC title game, run it back, probably play Clemson again, as we sit here the last day of August, and avenge that loss and potentially find themselves in the college football playoff. So they may not have to go wire to wire, but if Florida State is back, I start talking about them in a different way, I think, than we are right now because of what that would have meant with how they played against LSU. So that's a great headline. I'm excited to watch that one, excited to watch that game on Sunday. Obviously, the game of the entire weekend in my mind. Now, Razor got at us on X and says, Rattler has arrived. That's their headline. I'll just be totally transparent here. I would love this. I would love this. And if you are not just a total anti-South Carolina individual, meaning you probably root for North Carolina or NC State or Clemson or whoever, if you don't hate South Carolina by nature of your fanhood, which we respect, you would love this too, because think about all that this dude has been through. Not just since he got to college. Think about as a high school senior, the whole Netflix doc and our perception of him when he was like 18 years old. Yeah, nobody had it together at 18. Spencer Rattler was no exception. Gets to Oklahoma, has that great season after redshirting, and then he has all this hype about being the number one pick and about winning the Heisman Trophy, and then he gets benched in the rivalry game in the most visible way possible with Caleb Williams coming into the game. One, Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams, so I think we kind of look at that situation differently now. But just the adversity he's had to go through throughout his college career leading up to this moment, if he ends up being able to live up to what we were saying about him after that game against Florida, when we were talking about him being a Heisman Trophy guy and number one overall pick, well, let's just say he cements himself as a really good quarterback in the SEC, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the SEC. You'd feel great for Spencer Rattler, first of all. So there's that. It also probably means there's a lot of help around him. I think it means that Spencer Rattler got help defensively. They didn't have to score every possession. I think it also means that he got help up front with the run game, with the offensive line. He was better protected. Also, he just made better decisions. So everything sort of works in harmony, but I think you look around Spencer Rattler, because last year they did not run the football well, they did not protect him well. Both those things I think would have had to happen for Spencer Rattler to, quote, arrive. It probably also means that he got dimes against North Carolina. So leave that as it is. But what I think about, if this is the case, how are we looking at that game against Georgia? Right? How are we looking about the game where South Carolina goes to Athens, Georgia, lines it up with the back-to-back national champs, ton of pressure on them. South Carolina's playing free. They're not supposed to win that game. They weren't supposed to win the game against Tennessee or Clemson either. Remember that? So if Spencer Rattler ends up being the guy that we believe he could be, what we believed he could be out of high school, how differently do we view that game? How differently does Georgia view that game? Because we had Rusty Mansell of Dogs HQ right here on this very show. We asked him, Rusty, how do you beat Georgia? Looked us dead in the eyes and said, you got to have matchups on the outside. Well, if Spencer Rattler is dealing like he is in this scenario, and Juice Wells is playing how he played at the end of last year, that could be a ball game. Not predicting it. I'm just saying that game gets much more intriguing if we get that version of Spencer Rattler. So a great headline. I'd be excited to watch that one. I keep saying I'd be excited to watch it. I'd be excited to watch all of these, man. It's college freaking football. You love it. We love it, man. Let's go. All right. Last headline from one of y'all. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia leave week 1 with quarterback concerns. Now, we talked about this just a little bit a couple segments ago, right here on the live show. I would be slow to buy into this kind of headline. I'd be slow to believe there's a real concern at quarterback with any of those position rooms. And the reason why, first of all, it's week 1. Okay, so first time out of the gate, adrenaline's running. Week 1 isn't necessarily a great sample size for what you're going to be the rest of the season. It's still important. It's still crucial to what you're going to do the rest of the season, but it doesn't define you, okay? Also, how it's very hard to get in an actual rhythm, especially for Ohio State and Alabama, because they're going to play multiple quarterbacks. Like, as a quarterback, you kind of ease into the game. You figure out a defense. You start to get more comfortable. It's hard to trade drives, or it's hard to trade quarters or trade halves, whatever it ends up being with how they rotate these guys in there. It's hard to get in a real rhythm. And so I think that probably limits just a little bit how effective some of these guys will be able to be this first week, because they're not going to be able to go drive for drive and say, oh, we messed up on that last drive. Okay, well, in this next drive, let's adjust it. I'll know what I'm looking at. I'll be more comfortable. I'll be in a rhythm. I'll be in a flow. Let's get after it. Now, the Georgia situation is different. I mean, I don't think you're probably trading series, but even still, it's week 1 like I was talking about. I don't know that the whole playbook is open to you either for all these teams. Like, they should roll in week 1 for all these teams. I mean, they're all heavy favorites. They should be able to be just fine. So I don't think you're showing, your favorite pass concepts right away. It's probably bread and butter, probably the basics. Show as little as possible, score as many points as possible. Let's get out of here. Is probably the attitude for a lot of these teams. Other reason why I'm not worried, other reasons why this headline wouldn't scare me, tons of quarterback in all these rooms. Like, the right guy is in these rooms. How long it takes to find him, I don't know. But even at Alabama, let's say it's not Jalen Miller. Let's say it's not Tyler Buckner. Let's say it's not Ty Simpson. Well, you recruited Dylan Lonergan for a reason. If it's really not all 3 of those guys, there's a lot of Alabama fans that would be happy to see him in the game at some point in time this year. I don't think that'll happen. I'm just saying the talent at Alabama is just that. It's talent. That's why Nick Saban's the greatest of all time, because of how he recruits and how he develops. And they win a lot of football games, got a lot of national titles to show for it. Now, at Ohio State and Georgia, they could be very comfortable playing any of those guys. I really believe that. I mean, the good people at Dogs HQ told us that Gunnar Stockton and Brock Vandagriff during fall camp at Georgia reminded everybody just how good they were. Brock Vandagriff, a 5-star out of high school. Gunnar Stockton, a 4-star out of high school. Like, going with the same thing I said about Bama. A lot of talent. Ohio State, they got 2 5-stars to pick from. You know how many schools across the country would just move heaven and earth to have Devin Brown or Kyle McCord in their locker room as their starting quarterback? Ohio State's like, which one do we want to pick from? It's good to be Brian Hartline. It's good to be Ryan Day. So I think as a whole, week 1, if you are concerned about the quarterback position, let's give it a little bit longer. Let's sort of hold our breath a little bit here before we scream from the mountaintops that we got a situation that needs fixing when it comes to the quarterback room at Georgia, Ohio State, or Alabama. So that's that. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.